The water was already running when Junsook pushed the bathroom door open. Steam spilled into the bedroom like a living thing, thick and warm, fogging the glass walls of the penthouse. He stopped mid-step, instinctively reaching back for the door handle, too late. Before we continue, take a second to subscribe, like, and turn on notifications for more Afro-Korean stories like this. A silhouette moved behind the glass. His breath stalled. The sound of water hitting skin filled the room, slow and unhurried. Someone exhaled softly, unaware. Junsook didn't move. He didn't speak. His hand stayed frozen on the doorframe as if his body hadn't caught up with what his eyes already knew. Amora. She had arrived early for the site briefing. He'd told his assistant to give her access to the guest suite, had forgotten, for once, to lock the connecting door. Inside the shower, Amora tilted her head back, water threading through her hair, washing the long flight and sleepless night off her shoulders. She closed her eyes. And that was when she sensed it. Not a sound. Not movement. Presence. Her eyes snapped open. She turned. The glass wall didn't hide him the way she thought it would. Junsook stood there, fully dressed, tie loosened, jacket still on. His reflection fractured across the steam, his expression unreadable except for the tension in his jaw. Neither of them spoke. Seconds stretched. Then Amora reached for the handle. The door slid open halfway. "Mr. Kang," she said, steady despite everything. "This isn't what it looks like." The corner of his mouth twitched, not amusement. "Something darker." "I know exactly what it looks like," he replied. Silence fell again, heavier this time. She wrapped a towel around herself, chin lifted, refusing to shrink. That alone unsettled him more than the situation itself. "I was told this suite was unoccupied," she continued. "It was." "Then perhaps," she said evenly, "we should both pretend this never happened." She stepped past him. Junsook moved without thinking. His hand caught her wrist. The contact was brief, but electric. Her body stiffened. She looked down at his hand. Then back up at his face. "Let go," she said. He did. Immediately. As if burned. She walked out, barefoot against marble, not looking back. And Junsook Kang, CEO, strategist, man who never lost control, stood alone in his own bedroom, chest rising too fast, heartbeat loud in his ears. This wasn't the first time he'd seen her. But it was the first time the wall he'd built cracked. Later that morning, Singapore drowned under rain. Glass towers blurred into silver streaks as Amora sat across from him in the conference room, laptop open, hair still damp from her rushed escape earlier. She acted as if nothing had happened. That infuriated him. Junsook watched her speak, measured, brilliant, precise, explaining her redesign proposal to the board. Every word landed. Every slide made sense. She was good. Too good. And he'd known it from the first day. 6 months ago, when her portfolio crossed his desk, he had approved her contract personally. He remembered the photo attached, no smile, eyes sharp, guarded. Something about her refusal to perform had caught his attention. Now she stood 10 feet away, voice calm, hand steady. As if she hadn't stood naked in his private space an hour earlier. When the meeting ended, the board filtered out. She closed her laptop. "So," she said, finally meeting his eyes. "About earlier." He didn't reply. "Sir," she added, tone respectful but firm. "If this project is going to continue, we need clarity." "Clarity," he repeated. "Yes." He rose slowly from his chair. Amora's posture tightened, not fear, but awareness. "You want me to pretend it didn't happen," he said. "I want professionalism." He stopped in front of her. "You were in my space. You invited me into it," she countered. "Contractual." A pause. Rain hammered against the windows. Junsook leaned down slightly, not invading, but close enough that she felt it. "I don't make mistakes," he said quietly. Her brow furrowed. "Then what was this?" He straightened. "That," he said, "was inevitable." The word landed wrong. She closed her laptop slowly. "I'll need to reassess my stay here," she said. "This arrangement isn't changing." She stood. "I didn't ask permission." For the first time, his composure fractured. Be careful, he warned. Amora met his gaze without blinking. Obsession, she said softly, isn't the same as interest. And I don't work well under either. She walked out. The door closed. And Jun-suk finally exhaled. Hard. That night, he didn't sleep. He stood on the balcony, city glowing below, replaying moments he'd pretended not to notice. The way she avoided eye contact when praised. The way she stayed late, alone. The way she never once asked about him. He had told himself it was curiosity, control, observation. But standing there now, hands gripping the rail, he admitted the truth he'd avoided for months. He hadn't joined her in the shower by accident. He had known. And he hadn't stopped himself. Before we go further, if you enjoy slow burn, dangerous romance stories like this, take a second to subscribe, like, and turn on notifications. Because what Jun-suk is about to do next changes everything. The mistake Jun-suk made was not calling her back immediately. He waited. That alone told him something had shifted. Morning arrived with pale light and unanswered messages. His assistant confirmed Amora had skipped the site inspection and requested remote access for the rest of the week. For the rest of the week. Jun-suk stared at the words longer than necessary. He did not chase people. People adjusted to him. Yet by noon, he found himself standing outside the guest suite, knuckles hovering inches from the door. He didn't knock. He didn't open it either. Control, he reminded himself. Inside, Amora was packing. Not hurried. Not emotional. Methodical. The way someone packs when they've already made a decision. She paused when she sensed him again. She hated that she could feel him before hearing him. Is there a reason you're standing outside my door? She asked without turning. Yes. Then say it. He stepped inside. Her shoulders tightened, but she kept folding her clothes. I don't want you to leave, he said. She laughed once. Short. Disbelieving. That's not your decision. You're contracted. I can terminate, she replied. There are clauses for discomfort, he cut in. She turned then, eyes sharp. For power imbalance, she corrected. The words landed like a slap. Jun-suk didn't deny it. That silence was answer enough. You think I'm unaware of what this looks like, he said quietly. A CEO crossing a line with a consultant half the board already watches too closely? Then why are you here? She asked. He didn't answer right away. Because saying I can't stop thinking about you felt like weakness. Because admitting the truth meant stepping somewhere he had never allowed himself to stand. I misjudged the distance between us, he said instead. She studied him. Not his face, his restraint. That distance existed for a reason, she said. You were safe there. Safe. The word cut deeper than she knew. I'll move to a hotel, she continued. Finish my deliverables remotely. When the project ends, so does this. She picked up her bag. Jun-suk moved again, faster this time. Don't. She froze. Don't leave like this, he said. Not without hearing me. She closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, her voice was steady but tired. This is how it has to be. No, he said. It doesn't. She faced him fully now. You don't get to decide what's inevitable for me. The words echoed something she'd said earlier. He felt it then, the mirror she held up to him. I won't touch you again, he said. I won't cross another line. But I won't pretend what happened didn't matter. Why? She asked. Because I've already crossed the line in my head, he thought. Because pretending is dishonest, he said aloud. A beat. Then she asked the question he'd been dreading. Are you obsessed with me? The room went still. This was the moment where denial would have been easier. Jun-suk had built an empire on choosing the harder truth when it mattered. Yes, he said. The word hung between them. Not dramatic. Not loud. Final. Amora's breath caught despite herself. He continued, voice low, controlled. Not in the way you're imagining. Not ownership. Not fantasy. Attention. Awareness. You disrupt my order. That's not my responsibility. I know. Then why say it? Because you deserve to know the truth before you decide. She looked away, shaken. This is exactly why I need distance, she said. I'll give you space, he replied. But I won't withdraw my honesty. Silence swallowed them. Finally, she nodded once. I'll stay, she said. On my terms. He didn't smile. Of course. Days passed. They did not repeat the mistake of proximity. Meetings were formal. Emails precise. Conversations clipped. But the air between them remained charged, every pause stretched tight with things unsaid. At night, Amora lay awake in the guest suite, replaying his voice saying yes. Not denial. Not justification. Truth. She hated that it lingered. On the fourth evening, the rain returned, heavy, relentless. Power flickered across the city. Amora was reviewing blueprints when the lights cut out entirely. Darkness swallowed the suite. She reached for her phone. No signal. A knock came at the door. Once. Then again. She opened it cautiously. Jun-suk stood there, sleeves rolled up, hair damp from rain, a lantern in hand. Backup generator failed on this floor, he said. The emergency stairwell is active. She hesitated. I can escort you, he added. If you want. She stepped back, letting him in. They walked in silence, lantern casting moving shadows along the walls. The stairwell door closed behind them with a heavy thud. Halfway down, the building shuddered. The lights died again. Then, stillness. The stairwell emergency lights failed. The door above them locked. They were trapped between floors. Amora exhaled sharply. Jun-suk checked his phone. No signal, he said. She laughed weakly. Of course. They sat on the steps, lantern between them. Minutes passed. Then longer. In the quiet, the things they'd been avoiding crept back. You didn't tell me why you're like this, she said suddenly. Like what? So controlled, she said. Until you're not. He didn't deflect. My father, he said, taught me restraint is survival. She waited. He also taught me people leave when you show need. Her chest tightened. And you believe him? I lived it. She considered that. I grew up learning the opposite, she said. That people stay when you make yourself small. He looked at her then. Really looked. That's a lie, he said softly. She met his gaze. I know. The lantern flickered. The silence deepened, but it wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was dangerous. Amora, he said. Yes. If I asked you to trust me. She cut him off. I won't give you permission to want me. That's not what I was going to say. What were you going to say? That if I ever cross another boundary, he said, you should leave. No explanations. No guilt. She searched his face. And you'd let me? Yes. Something in her expression shifted, not relief. Recognition. The building trembled again. Lights flared faintly in the distance. Rescue was coming. The moment was ending. She stood. Don't make promises you can't keep, she said. He rose as well. I don't. The doors opened minutes later. They stepped out into light, back into their roles. But something irreversible had happened in the dark. That night, alone in his penthouse, Jun-suk finally admitted the truth he'd been circling. This was no longer about restraint. It was about whether he could survive letting her go. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure he could. His obsession is no longer hidden. Her distance is no longer safe. If you're still here, subscribe and like now, because what happened next is where control breaks, power shifts, and someone crosses a line they can't undo. The next morning, the air between them carried the weight of what wasn't said. Meetings resumed. Reports flowed. But every glance held tension like a live wire. Amora tried to bury herself in work. But Jun-suk's presence was impossible to ignore, always there, quiet but consuming. He never broke boundaries again, but he didn't have to. His silence spoke louder than any gesture. That evening, the company hosted a charity gala, his idea. Amora didn't plan to attend. She hated crowds, hated the way people looked at her when she walked beside him. But her absence would be noticed. So she went. The ballroom shimmered, crystal lights, mirrored walls, hundreds of faces pretending to care about causes they'd never think of tomorrow. Jun-suk spotted her instantly. She wasn't in her usual suit. A deep emerald gown traced the curve of her back, subtle but impossible to ignore. Her hair was pinned up, exposing the slender line of her neck. He had seen her every day for weeks, but never like this. She was talking to a foreign investor, smiling lightly, the kind of professional grace she wore like armor. And for the first time, he saw another man lean in too close. Too comfortable. Something inside him twisted. He excused himself from the group he was speaking with and crossed the room before he realized he'd moved. The investor turned at the last second, startled by the shadow that fell across him. "Mr. Kang," he said, a little too nervous. "We were just discussing architecture," Amora finished for him, her tone sharp but calm. "And we were finished." Her eyes flicked toward Jun-suk. There was warning in them. He ignored it. "May I have a word?" he asked. It wasn't a request. They stepped into a side corridor, away from the glitter and music. The noise of the party faded behind the heavy door. "You can't do that," she said before he spoke. "What?" Appear out of nowhere, and she stopped herself, shaking her head. "You can't police who talks to me." "I wasn't policing," he said. "I was reacting." "To what?" "Conversation." He took a step closer. "To proximity." Her brows furrowed. "That's not your right." "I know," he said quietly. "But it doesn't stop it from happening." Her chest rose and fell faster. "Then control it." "I'm trying." The hallway lights flickered, dim gold across his face. He looked at her the way someone looks at a truth they wish they could unsee. She crossed her arms. "You're crossing the same line again." "Then tell me to stop," he said. "Not with silence. Not with avoidance. Say it." Her lips parted, but words didn't come out. Because the truth was, she didn't want to say it. "I don't owe you clarity," she whispered. "No," he said, "but you owe yourself honesty." Her pulse stumbled. "What do you want from me, Jun-suk?" He hesitated. The name on her lips, his name, broke something quiet inside him. "I want to understand why you're the only thing that makes sense and the only thing I shouldn't have," he said. She exhaled shakily. "You're confusing attraction for meaning." "Then why do I feel like I've known you longer than my own reflection?" He didn't touch her. Didn't move closer. But the air between them felt smaller. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only their breathing filled the space. Then she said softly, "If you keep saying things like that, I'll start believing them." He smiled faintly, but his eyes betrayed him. Maybe that's the point. They didn't return to the ballroom right away. When they finally did, the crowd had thinned. Cameras flashed as they walked past CEO and consultant, distant but too synchronized to ignore. That night, headlines whispered speculation. She ignored them. He didn't. Days later, Amora stood on the balcony of her suite, city lights scattered like stars. The project was nearly complete. Her contract would end in a week. She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt the weight of something unfinished. A knock. She turned. The door was open. Jun-suk stood there. "I thought you were in Tokyo," she said. "I cancelled the flight." "Why?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped onto the balcony, rain misting in from the night air. "I thought distance would make this easier," he said finally. "It didn't." She looked at him. "You promised you wouldn't." "I'm not here to ask for anything," he interrupted gently. "I'm here to say goodbye. Properly." The word goodbye shouldn't have hurt as much as it did. She turned away, gripping the railing. "Why does it sound like a confession?" she asked quietly. "Because it is," he said. She closed her eyes. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't make this harder." "I won't touch you," he said. "But let me speak." He moved closer, but still kept distance between them. "I built my life around control. Success. Silence," he said. "But then you walked into it. And now every quiet room feels empty when you're not in it." She inhaled sharply, eyes wet though she hadn't noticed. He continued, voice softer. "I don't want to own you." I don't even want to keep you. I just want to remember that for once, I wanted something that wasn't calculated. She turned to face him then. And what if I told you I feel it too, she asked. That I've tried to hate you for it, but I can't. His throat worked silently. Then I'd tell you that makes leaving necessary. The rain grew heavier, spilling over the edge of the balcony. Wind tangled her hair, cold against her skin. Jun-suk. He shook his head. No. If I stay, I'll ruin the very thing I'm trying to protect. A tear slid down her cheek. She didn't bother hiding it. Say it, she whispered. Say what you really want to say. He stepped close enough for her to feel his breath. I'm obsessed with you, he said quietly. But I want you to be free. She stared at him for a long time, the storm raging behind them, until she finally spoke. Freedom doesn't mean forgetting. He left before dawn. A letter arrived the next morning, handwritten, neat. I'll finish the project remotely. Take the credit. You earned it. Don't come looking for me. But if you ever stand in the rain and feel someone watching. It's just me, remembering that moment we almost lost control. She read it twice, then folded it carefully. Outside, the city woke slowly, unaware that two people on opposite ends of its skyline had finally stopped pretending. 3 months later. Singapore's skyline burned gold under the setting sun. Amora had returned, not for him, but for closure. The architectural project she'd led was finally being unveiled. Her design now shaped the city's new financial heart, the Axis Tower, a structure built on precision and calm, everything her life had lacked lately. She stood before the glass facade, admiring how it reflected the clouds. Then she saw his reflection behind hers. Jun-suk. He was dressed simply this time, no suit, no entourage. Just a man standing quietly a few steps back, letting her notice first. Her breath caught. I thought you wouldn't come, she said. I told myself the same, he replied. Then I remembered promises mean nothing if they end in silence. She turned, meeting his eyes. Time hadn't softened him. It had stripped him bare, less polished, more human. You left without saying goodbye, she said. I thought words would make it worse. They didn't help either. They stood in the low hum of city sounds. For the first time, there was no tension, only unfinished emotion. They walked side by side along the edge of the rooftop garden she had designed. Below, the traffic shimmered like moving light. Above, the wind carried the faint smell of rain. Your tower turned out perfect, he said. It was meant to outlast us, she replied softly. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I read your interviews. You called it a structure of control. It was the only thing I knew how to build. He looked at her then, gaze deep and steady. And now? She paused. Now I want something that feels less like control and more like peace. He nodded slowly. That's what I came to say too. Amora blinked. You came to say you've found peace. No, he said. To ask if I can start learning it, with you. Her pulse faltered. Jun-suk. He lifted a hand, gentle, not possessive. I'm not asking for what we were. I'm asking for a clean start. No power. No contracts. Just truth. She hesitated, emotions caught between disbelief and longing. Why now? She whispered. Because obsession doesn't end, it evolves, he said. And mine became gratitude. They lingered there, the city buzzing below them, the air heavy with everything they hadn't said. Amora stepped closer, eyes soft but sure. Gratitude isn't love. He shook his head. No. But it's where love stops being selfish. For a moment, the silence between them carried the weight of everything broken and everything still possible. She reached up and brushed rain from his collar. You're still terrible at staying dry. And you still look at storms like they're invitations. She smiled faintly. Lightning flashed in the distance, reflecting in the glass walls around them. He looked at her the way one looks at something already lost but too precious to forget. If I told you I still think about that night, he said quietly, would it undo all this peace? She didn't look away. No. It would make it real. He exhaled, relief passing across his face. Then yes, he said. I think about it. About you. Every day. They stood close now, only inches apart. The rain began to fall, light at first, then heavier, until droplets clung to their faces and hair. Neither moved for cover. Amora laughed softly, shaking her head. We keep meeting in the rain. It's the only thing that ever washes me clean, he said. She looked up at him, eyes bright through the water. You don't need cleansing, Junsuk. You just need to stop running from your humanity. He didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, maybe that's why I couldn't stay away from you. She smiled, not from victory but recognition. For once, the man in front of her wasn't a CEO, or a symbol of restraint. Just someone learning how to feel again. The event below began to fade, music echoing through glass, flashes from cameras reflected on the wet surface. But up here, it was just them. Amora looked toward the city. So what now? He followed her gaze. Now you keep building. And if you'll let me, I'll build beside you. No contracts. No control. And if I say no, she asked gently. Then I'll still thank you, he said. For teaching me how to want something without owning it. Her lips trembled into a half smile. You finally learned how to let go. He looked at her, soft, unguarded. Not let go. Just hold differently. She stepped forward, close enough for their hands to brush. The contact was small, human, real. No tension. No hunger. Just understanding. When the thunder rolled and the world felt wide again, she whispered, you know, obsession wasn't the real story. What was? Redemption, she said. Yours. Mine. Maybe both. He nodded once. Then let's end it there. They stood side by side as the storm passed, two people who had finally stopped fighting themselves. Voiceover, narrative wrap-up for YouTube. He didn't walk away this time. And she didn't have to chase him. Some stories don't end in fireworks or apologies. Some end quietly in understanding. He confessed his obsession. She faced her fear of being seen. And in the end, that was enough. The camera would pan out slowly, rain fading, city lights glowing brighter. Her voice overlaps faintly. Sometimes love isn't about holding on. It's about knowing when you've both healed enough to stand apart and still feel whole. If you've stayed till the end, you already know. This wasn't just a story about obsession. It was about transformation. So before the next story begins, hit subscribe, like, and turn on the bell. Because our next tale asks an even harder question. Can love survive after truth destroys everything?